Hello, what up, what up, what up? Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday. That's right, it is Monday. And it's a nice election day. Um, Hope everybody voted, or maybe you're going to vote after this event. There'll be still some time, I believe, depending on where in the nation you're joining from. My name is Luke Reece, and I am going to be the host for this evening's event, Black Canadian Theatre Leadership, Embracing Transformation and Adaptation. Shout out to the Walker Cultural Leaders Series, which this is a part of, and to Brock University for having us and kind of being the physical host for this evening's presentation and conversation. And Brock University acknowledges that the land on which it sits on is a traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. Also going to loop in the Toronto GTA area where I'm from, which covers the lands of the Wendat and the Mississaugas of the Credit, protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. And as we know, today, these lands are home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And we are still, on election day, navigating the landscape and trying to find ways for us to reconcile, to work together, to take care of the planet. I want there to be an Earth for my children and my grandchildren one day to be able to inhabit. So that's something that's on my mind. And also when thinking about land acknowledgements and thinking about conversations with black leaders in this context, it feels strange to me, and it's always felt strange to not acknowledge also some of the hardships that Black people have been through. And I've done this in a number of ways in land acknowledgements, and I was doing some research today and stumbled upon this article that was talking about a labor acknowledgement. So this is my first time framing a labor acknowledgement for all of you exclusively tonight. And I'm going to take it exactly from the article, just because I want to be able to workshop this as we workshop anything in theater, but starting from this place. So the labor acknowledgement acknowledges that much of what we know of this country, and I'll expand it to say North America today, including its culture, economic growth, and development throughout history and across time, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their ascendants who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking of their people, slavery, and Jim Crow. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice, and we must acknowledge the tremors of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can still be felt and witnessed today. A little grim, but you know what? We're going to workshop it for sure. And I'm going to introduce our speakers in just a moment, but I want to let you know the running order of tonight, what's going on with you until 8 o'clock here Eastern time. We're going to be chatting, Mike, myself, and Philip until approximately 7:40 p.m., at which point we'll take some questions from the audience for about 20 minutes until 8 o'clock. There's a Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom webinar, which you can use to let us know your questions. We're going to take questions from there. I'm going to assume people have been on a Zoom webinar before, but basically there's no chat function for you to be able to speak with each other, but you can submit the questions through the Q&A. We can't see you, you can't see you, but you can see us, and it's all good. This is going to be recorded. It's something else. So if you're going to be asking a question that maybe you don't want to be recorded, like maybe you really want to ask something deep in person, I don't know. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be on YouTube. Keep that in mind when you're asking your questions. We will keep receipts. And on the note of keeping receipts, I'm going to introduce our first guest on the panel here, Mr. Philip Aiken. Philip has been directing for over 46 years. He's won many awards. He was one of the founders of Obsidian Theatre Company and was the artistic director there from 2006 up until 2020. He's a friend of mine, he's a mentor of mine, and he is the reason why I think so much about the words that come out of my mouth. Philip, I'll let you turn on your video and join us. There you are.
Am.
I feel like this is just a resting Philip face, so it's really appropriate that when you turned on the video, this is what we saw.
His chair is not the most comfortable anymore, so this is what you get.
You gotta get yourself a new chair. We're still gonna
man,
be inside for a little while. I feel
another
like you
conversation. Another
conversation. Today we're not talking about the leadership in chairs and home offices. We're talking about some Black excellence up in here. Speaking of Black excellence, our next guest is Mike Payette. Mike was formerly a Montreal-based director and will be coming to Toronto as the new incoming AD of Tarragon Theatre. He's officially started in that position. Before that, he was with Geordie Theatre. He's done work with Table d'Hôte, and he's a wonderful person and a champion of all. Mike and I first really met at the PACT conference in PEI in Charlottetown, shared many a drink together, and from then we've been friends ever since. So come on, Mike.
Hey, I need to mimic my resting face.
There you go.
My resting position. Although my chair is a little bit more upright. Yeah, I'll do this. Hey, folks.
There we go. Yeah. This is gonna be fun. I was checking out the list of attendees. I don't know, Philip or Mike, if you've scrolled down the list of names, but there's some cool people. Just some Obsidian folks there. I saw Michael Sinclair, gonna give him a shout out. Tuma's there. I saw Kimberly Rampersad. I saw Emily Aubin. So we're in good company as we dive into a version of a conversation that I feel like the three of us have had many times in many different formats for years and years and years. So let's try to keep it fresh for the people, shall we?
Okay.
So to start us off, there's definitely been a change in the leadership in theater companies over the last 5 years, over the last 2 years, over the last year. We're seeing Black leadership come into power, and it's pretty exciting. Mike, obviously with Tarragon, also bringing in Maika Payne as the associate AD there. Wayne at Soulpepper with myself. We've got Kimberly Rampersad, who I shouted out earlier at the Shaw. We've got Tanisha Tate, who I also saw in the audience there. Shout out to Tanisha Tate at Cahoots. It's pretty wild. And when I think about these people too, I'm like, I feel like they were all in some way supported by Obsidian Theatre back in the day. And I gotta say, Philip, what is it like for you to just sit back and see this happen? You know, to be founding Obsidian Theatre in 2000, and then now you're seeing all of these people who you wanted to help taking on these other theater companies.
Well, I would be lying if I didn't big myself up about it all the time, frankly. What we wanted to do and what we believed in doing was training people to give them the tools so that they could have the best chance of success. And so while I look at my input or Obsidian's input as a very small part or a very small percentage, I think it was a valuable percentage. And I think that all of those people that you mentioned and a number more are truly amazing artists. And we were lucky to be able to help them succeed.
And Mike, you've been in leadership now for a little while, because that night that I described in Charlottetown, which was a good time, that was like, I feel like that was a year into your time at Geordie. And then like coming to it, like first of all, how did it feel coming into leadership at Geordie, specifically in Montreal? And then what is it like to take on the leadership so far at Tarragon?
I do want to just take a moment. I am still here in Montreal, and just acknowledging where I'm coming from, which is unceded Kanien'kehá:ka territory, and home to the Abenaki, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a couple of years in, but I think, you know, there's so much, you know, when I think about like the beginnings, I was one of those folks where, you know, trying to put myself my feet into the fire, sort of, you know, so to speak. So producing started really, really, really early in my life. And it was actually the support of various mentors or folks that I hadn't actually met, but knew existed across Canada, Philip being one, Janet Sears being another, Alison Seeley Smith, a host of folks. But when I came into leadership with Jordy, I was inheriting a historically white-led institution, as many of the companies in Montreal, save for Tizi Dunia and Black Theatre Workshop, which is another Black mandated or Black story mandated company based in Montreal. And so my challenge going into Jordy was a feat of imposter syndrome, of regardless of like what that history was of like my independent producing and directing with Table d'Hôte Theatre. I was coming into an institutional landscape, and it was different. It was different because I was coming in. I was coming in as one of the only. I was coming in as the only Black leader of a culturally led organization in Quebec. And so regardless of what I was feeling, I felt like a certain amount of pressure to be like this uber Black leader. And I'm like, I have no idea what that actually meant, but I feel like that deserves a cape or something. But like 6 years, 6 years later, I'm coming, with Tarragon, and I just started in September. I'm a little bit, I'm older and have a little bit more personal, the word isn't integrity, but a personal stakes at this. I'm coming at this relationship a little bit differently than I did 6 years ago, because I'm not the same person. And so the conversations I'm having with board staff and my awesome managing director partner, Andrea, are different than the ones that I was having 6 years ago. And so, and I'll end it here. For now, there wasn't a lot of examples of Black leadership, when I was starting. And so now this evolution of what the ecology looks like with Black leadership in institutions is really, really amazing. And so the work becomes, for me, is assuring that continuation of generational or cyclical work happens, so that I can make sure that I'm not the last, and Philip isn't one of the first, and I'm not the last.
Yeah, I feel like you can look left, you can look right. Oh, I went the opposite. Left, right. Well, for you, maybe it was right. And there's Black leadership popping up all over the place. And Philip with Obsidian Theatre mandated to support Black theater in Canada. And now we're taking on these other companies with different mandates. And you referenced mandate earlier, Mike. Philip, I'd love for you to provide just a little bit of context for that word when we're talking about it and what we mean. This is going to be a common theme tonight, folks, where we're going to, before we talk about a word and say it a bunch of times in a conversation, we're actually going to define that word together so we all know what we're talking about. So what do we mean when we say mandate, Philip?
Well, I know what I mean when I say it. I don't know if everybody means the same thing. Mandate is a word that's thrown around a lot. I've heard it used innumerable times, about 98.7% of the time incorrectly, because mandate is a legal term. When you incorporate into a company, page 3, it says, what's your mandate? You write that in, and that is the basis by which the government legally incorporates your company. And so that doesn't change, really. The only way to change it is to go back to the government and say, hey, when we incorporated 50 years ago, we want to change that now. Let's open up Pandora's box. And nobody, I think, in their right mind would do that. So mandate is legal. It's how you're incorporated. It's the basis of which you get your charitable status. What people really mean is, how do we change the artistic vision? Because your mandate gives you a wide, very loose framework. And it's up to each individual artistic director to say, how do I make that my way? So at Obsidian, if you say, we are going to develop new theater practitioners, right? So you can do that in innumerable ways. I may have done it through the Mentor Apprentice program or Darktown or any, but those are particular initiatives. Anybody else can come in and totally do different initiatives to move that same agenda forward. So what we're really talking about when people use the word mandate is not the legal term. What they really want to say is, how can we adapt an artistic vision that is changeable for our time?
Great. And just to say also, you know, Mike, Philip, chime in at any point. I'll go back and forth. I'll go sideways, but, you know, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I'll add on to what Philip's saying, and I had to say the pre-chat that we had a week ago, I was like, oh yeah, well, that was good, that was good, because Philip, you mentioned this very thing, and we started riffing on vision and mission as well, right? And if the mandate is the thing that is the legal obligation of the company to maintain, then the mission and the vision are the things that evolved. And the way that I see the mission is that encompasses the scope, or the scope in which the mandate is executed, like the who and the where and the why, really. Like, why is it that you're doing, and how is it going to be, and who is it reaching? And then the vision from an artistic leadership perspective becomes, well, how are you going to execute it? And that is really based on that individual mind. But there's certainly other voices that make that vision into a reality, and I'm sure we'll speak about that more, because it's not singularly from an artistic director. Sure, it can percolate within our brains, but it, you know, in terms of it has to translate to action. And then we're talking about teams, and we're talking about buy-in, and we're talking about ownership of that vision outside of just one singular voice.
Well, I don't know if I've
Let's go.
I believe that, and I'm finding out that it is apparently getting to be not an approved belief anymore, but I do believe that the artistic leadership is the visionary. I think that vision is what pulls together a board, pulls together a staff, pulls together all of the other voices to build on that vision and make it special. I'm not a big believer in that's not, I was going to say in groupthink, because no, but I think there has to be somebody who says, this is where we're going. This is an idea, and then sit around and have other people kick around and say, yeah, we could do that this way, this way, this way. But the idea of somebody who has the talent and the vision and the drive and the passion to push that vision forward, I think is necessary for the growth of an organization. So I just worry sometimes, Mike, that if it's everybody pulling their own way, then I don't know where you get to.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to confuse the word that I will use, ownership of vision versus steering the vision. So I don't disagree with you at all, Philip. In fact, that's actually what I'm saying, is that the idea, the seeds of the vision come from, yes, this talent comes from this voice, has to come from this voice. There's artistic leadership for a reason, and even outside of the combo of hierarchy or circle or group or collaboration, certainly that is our responsibility, that is our job, and that is our opportunity, right? But outside of, I think there comes a point, certainly when we're trying to translate that initial vision to how do we bring in audience, like literally the brass tacks of the operation of the vision, then it becomes for me, I think it's really, really important that someone out, like a staff member, can articulate my vision as clearly as I can. And so that takes a certain amount of time, but it still comes from me in this case, or yourself. So I think eventually it comes to a place of like, let's have this combo of how do we get it done. But yeah, you're totally right. It still comes from that first voice.
But it's also, I think, incumbent upon the artistic leadership to create the culture where all of that can thrive.
Absolutely.
So I know that in one of the things I say first off in every rehearsal is that everybody has a voice in my rehearsal hall, right? Everybody. And the number of times that an apprentice ASM on their first job has saved me from a big mistake. There's a number of them, right? But because they felt they had a voice in the room, they could do it, they could say it, they could be part of it. So yeah, bringing that culture to bear, that very fecund, fruitful culture where people are engaged and people have buy-in and they say, yes, this is where we're going, and I can get 3 knots more speed out of that and 20 more people rowing. I think that's great. I think that's essential to a rich and, I don't know, really holistic, thriving organization.
I love the fact that it's building the culture in order for that to happen, because that, I don't know if that's specific to the folks that are on this call, and we know that there are other leaders out there who think that way, or not even thinking that way, but practice that way because it's innately part of who they are. But you can see that difference, right, in a company where you have folks, you have staff, you have whomever who don't necessarily work within that culture versus those who want to champion that forward. So that they're not just, they're not just a number or a paycheck within the company. They have stakes within it from a personal sense. So yeah, preach.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I think what I'm learning in going from Obsidian to Soulpepper is how much work it is to really establish that culture, how much time, how much energy you have to put into that. Especially a larger organization. Like at Obsidian, you open the door to that office and the culture hit you. Like it was just, we were in that, there were 4 of us, we were in that office together, we breathed together, it was just in us. And then going to a bigger organization during a pandemic where we're not even in the building together, I'm meeting people over Zoom, meeting people for the first time the last couple of weeks going in. And I think the big thing for us in this year ahead, especially with a lot of new staff, I'm sure folks have seen that there's been a lot of job postings. There's some more that are coming out. Stay tuned. But it's just to be together and to establish that culture for Wayne to be able to have this new team and to be able to, we're going to work together and make that happen. But it's so important. And I feel so far from it because of the pandemic as well. Mm-hmm. I just want to say too, I see someone has their, I think, Sulu. You got your hand raised there. If you can just put your, it was a hand slip. It's okay. If you have a question again, please put it in the chat. It'll pop up. It's all good. But good to see that you're there, Sulu. Hope you're doing well. I'm going to take us in a direction that we didn't talk about in the pre-chat because it started to come up in terms of boards and leadership and like where the responsibility falls. One thing, since we're like demystifying what a mandate is, and we're going to talk about stakeholders later, can we also just talk about how ADs are hired and how these EDs are hired as well? Because I think that like some artists I talk to like really think that, the community has a big say and it's like really, and like the staff are really involved, but that's not typically the case. And ultimately the board has the board, it's a board hiring. And the board is volunteers. The board is made out of people who care enough to use some of their time to do this. And then they are charged with the responsibility of, yes, fundraising, yes, some general governance, but ultimately hiring the people who will be steering the ship. Any thoughts or things to add to that?
Well, I could tell a few stories, but Mike, they're not about me being on the hiring committee that hired you, okay?
I'll just turn my camera off now.
Well, I don't. Well, I mean, you know, I don't want to, because I was on the committee that hired Mike, and it was a great adventure. But it's not all about that. But so generally speaking, on the 2 or 3 hiring committees that I've been on, there has been board input. There is usually community members, and usually, but not always, somebody from the staff of the company. It's very tricky in a way, because Luke, as you said, the board is made up of volunteers, and you're such a nice guy, because really it's made up of volunteers of a group of people who are very committed to the theater, but actually don't know very much about theater at all. And they're all very good in their own chosen fields, but they're not necessarily up to date on the ins and outs of what a theater is running like. And so community members are often brought in to provide context or bias or whatever. I don't know why people be listening to me in a board, in a hiring committee, but there you go. So you try really hard to not or to declare your biases as much as possible. But no, you can provide context, you can provide a vote, you can ask questions, you can maybe come at questions from a slightly different angle. But the fact of it is that it's a job, and the board has responsibility for hiring. The board does the negotiating. It's not up to the committee. So we give input, and then we walk away, and the board deals with the rest of it.
And unless, well, no, there's no unless. There might be an extra step in there, depending on what either the AD, ED, MD, GM, whatever time and place the company is in. So we saw that a lot in the past 18 months, whatever, a couple of years, where community consultations ended up happening. And usually those community consultations were in response to a call out from, to an institution that didn't necessarily historically, I don't know, whatever, insert the thing here. And so that's not often the case, but still, yeah, it always comes back to the board. They're the ones making the decision.
The best hiring of an AD ever was at a board meeting at Obsidian, and Alison Seeley Smith said, "I'm leaving in 3 months, Philip is taking over." That was it. Done. And
big up on yourself again. The best hiring of an AD ever was the hiring of you.
I didn't hire me, they did it. But it was as simple as that. And I know that we've gone a long way from that kind of thing. But frankly, I also think that there is something to be said in certain cases. I don't think every job needs to be posted and hosted and bruited around. I think there are times that, and I've said this to other organizations that aren't, that aren't Black culturally specific, but they're white culturally specific organizations. If they want to change, if they want to make a change, then they need to headhunt. They need to go for people. It's not necessarily that you will always get who you want through a process like that. It could be you say, I need to black up the such and such department. I am going to go find the people. I'm going to go hire them, one and done. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
And it's also like a part of that is just knowing what your priorities are, setting them and owning them. And I think companies are in a place too where they're tiptoeing around it still. They're saying, we really want to diversify the staff. We want to have these people. And then you're in the meetings and you're like, well, are we going to consider, okay, I'm gonna be frank, are we going to consider the white applicants or not? Like, yeah, I've been on committees and hiring things where I'm like, are we like, how much of a priority is this to you? Like, are we gonna, like, should we bring them into an interview? Is that actually wasting this person's time? Or are we really wanting to hire somebody Black, somebody Indigenous, somebody of color? And can we just get to that? Because why are we beating around the bush? And I've been on some committees where, and it's been so refreshing when they've just said that. And I'm like, great, cool. Now let's not waste anybody's time. Let's go on. But then I also think that, so I was asked this question when I was going through the interview process for the Associate AD at Soulpepper. I don't know if I ever told the two of you this. Wayne and I were talking, and she asked me how I would feel knowing that, you know, this was a posting that was very clearly for a Black and Indigenous person. And would I feel any type of way about like my confidence being in that position? You know, feeling like, oh, if that, and I said to her, I don't know what my wording was exactly, but I'm like, no, this, like, I know that I would have gotten this position no matter what. Like, you could put in, but yeah, but I don't think all artists have, especially artists of color, have that kind of confidence going in. Like, I was lucky where I was supported by a lot of people coming up. What do we say to give them that confidence? To say that, like, yeah, maybe they're a part of why they want you is because they want to diversify it, but fucking take that space, own it, and open that door for other artists. How do we get them there?
Oh, people, you know, come on. Oh my God, does everybody need to be pushed and helped up the stairs? No,
We're
they
still
don't.
there though. Like, I think some people.
I think artists of color need to big themselves up and step forward and stop all this crap, right? Like why for 1 minute in 2021 are we looking for white people to solve our problems? Get over it. Y'all want something? Put on your big person hat and go and get it. Done. If you can't be brave, if we're artists, we're people working in a field where bravery is supposed to be essential. So be brave.
Yeah, I'm talking about that step before they know that they can be brave. So that's what I'm thinking about. So I'm with you. Like, yes, like there's work that we can do. We're agents of our own lives. We can charge things forward. We are brilliant. We are. But I don't know, like, I don't know how many people, I don't know how many Black folk when I was starting out were going like, yeah, I'm gonna go into this field. I'm gonna go into this business. I didn't even knowing that they hadn't seen a piece of theater, they hadn't seen art, because that's for economic reasons, for whatever reasons, there's an access hold there. So I'm like, yes, but I want to build that thing just before, which is like, you know, that this career, this industry, this whatever is for you. And then once you know that it's for you, you go forth and conquer, right? So
but I agree, Mike. I mean, I guess it's because seeing the investment of Obsidian and BTW in their training programs, right? I'm always reminded every time I think about those training programs, I think about those people, you know, breaking up the sod and cutting down trees to make farmland. It's hard work. It's work of years, right? And the investment into Black artists have come from Black theater companies. Now there's a bunch of Johnny come latelys. You know, it's like the Blue Jays are making a run, so everybody loves the Blue Jays now, right? And then whatever happens, they'll jump off the wagon. But Black theater companies have been doing this work for years and years and years, and we are now seeing the fruits of that labor. So that work has to continue. I would suggest that any company who wants to advance the artistry of non-white artists needs to do the work. And it's years and years of labor. And it will take a long time before the fruits are there. But if you don't do that, you can't really accomplish anything. So it's a twofold thing. So I'm speaking of all those people that went through the mentor apprentice program in Darktown. Get up.
Yeah. I feel that. I feel that.
Get up and stand up and do it, yo. I can't really badger anybody when there's all sorts of them on this call who've got all these great jobs now, right? Like, I'm like,
yeah, they're all amazing. They're all trumpet. No, it's true. It's true though.
They'll be sending me text messages.
yeah, my phone is on
That's
fire
it,
now.
blowing up.
Philip said this. Philip said that. No. But you're right. Like, I want to go to the it takes a long time, right? It absolutely takes a long time, and it takes a long ass time. And you know, if there's something to think about, you know, our white colleagues and leaders, and is that this cannot be a niche. This isn't a niche moment in our sector, right? This isn't a flash like a lightning. It is a long thunderstorm, you know. And I don't know where that analogy came from, but you can
anything
take it or leave it.
Anything that's destructive, I'm all for it, bro.
Yeah. Just let it rumble. Let it
bring
rumble.
it down.
Yeah.
Bring it down.
We've had a lot of tornadoes this year. Maybe that's a part of it too. I don't know. I'm gonna bring us back to mission and vision. So we've got companies that have a mandate. We've got leadership coming in that can change the mission and the vision to hopefully provide more training opportunities. Philip, you were talking about how you did it to the Mentor Apprentice program. Mike, coming into Tarragon, what are some of the things that you're hoping to change or adjust? I know you're like 3 weeks in, but where's your mind going in terms of how do I just kind of turn the dial a little bit? Because Tarragon's mandate is like what? It's new play development?
Yeah, like straight up.
Like simple, yeah.
It's a very clear mandate. It's what's, you know, gotten Tarragon to, you know, 50 years and the storied company that it is. Create, develop, and produce new work. That is Tarragon's mandate.
Boom.
Within that, boom, exactly, mic drop. Within that, I think historically there's been the championing of and fostering the Canadian playwright. So a very perhaps obvious entry point is, what is the definition of Canadian? What is the definition of playwright? For me, it's really opening that scope, right? Canadian isn't a homogenized experience. We know that we all come from different realities. We're diaspora. We're indigenous to this land. Like, we have the scope of the Canadian voice, and for me, for Tarragon, it is our opportunity to actually investigate that very question. Not coming with this is the Canadian voice, but fostering how storytellers define themselves as Canadian. And then when it comes through the playwriting scope, it's like, let's open up the possibilities of theater and theatricality. We will always embrace the playwright in that sort of 3-5 act structure. There will always be that traditional sort of Euro gaze within playwriting and dramaturgy, but we know that that's not the only, or I know that we know that that's not the only form. That's not the only definition of what makes theater excellent. And so when we look at the storyteller or the creator as opposed to solely the playwright, all of a sudden form and discipline opens up, and the possibilities and how a story is experienced becomes exponential. And so those are the things that I'm immediately looking at as we look to the next 50 years. And already, even in the 3 weeks and talking about that buy-in of staff, I have, you know, I'm inheriting a really awesome group of people, and I have had the opportunity to welcome some new awesome people who are just as curious about that vision that I'm holding, so that they could steer their work in supporting that vision.
I thought you were going to give us your first season
I know.
I was
I
waiting.
know.
Exclusive season announcement. Here we go.
I'll just, yeah, I'll
Well,
look here at the
I know
whiteboard. It's over
Glenn
there.
Sumi
Yeah.
was on here. I think I saw Martin Moore. So there are people here that can
Push
break the
that out.
news. You
Yeah.
gotta
I'm
be
getting a whole
careful.
bunch of private chats now. No, it's exciting though. It's exciting because the notion of, but I also have to say, where Tarragon is situated, we're a really fortunate company. We're a really well-supported company in terms of our patrons. They're incredibly loyal. They're very, very smart, and they're actively wanting to see evolution within Tarragon. And so I'm a part of that. I'm absolutely coming in that time at the crest of that wave, and I fully recognize that, and I know that they will be along for the ride. We'll probably talk about audience later, and those who aren't along for the ride, we'll find those out as well.
Yeah, we're coming up on the audience question very soon, but I just wanted to think of. So at Soulpepper, we're going to be announcing our season in a month-ish. It keeps getting pushed back because, that's what this is with COVID. And Wayne and I are talking about how when people see the season, they're going to be like, oh, is this a BIPOC theater company that only does BIPOC? Like, it's pretty. And but I look at the season, I'm like, these are damn good shows. Like, where does the quality of the work come into play with this discussion about vision and mission too? Because I think that's why, I don't know, when I was first getting into the industry, a lot of my friends, a lot of my family, they didn't come out to see theater because they just assumed it was bad. There was an assumption, maybe they had gone to the Fringe. I'm talking to some youth we're working with out in Regent Park, and they only go to a show if 17 people tell them it's good. I feel like we have to not just prioritize, but talk about more openly, potentially to audiences, how good the work can be and how that is also a part of the programming. We know inherently as artists, we want it to be good work, but I don't know actually if we're good at communicating that when we're talking about our mission and our vision. Do we actually want to do are we doing the classics? Are we doing the new Canadian classics? Are we doing the shows that are going to blow your mind? How do we talk about the work being good? That's my question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's an evolution, I think, that happens whereby, and I'm having been at Obsidian from the start, people would come out to see a show, right? And then make their judgment. It's the piano lesson. Is it good? Is it bad? It's Adventures of a Black Girl. Is it good? Is it bad? And then once you invest the time and you set a caliber of your work, then people would switch over and care less about the individual show and more that it was an Obsidian show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this is where Mike and Tarragon, I mean, there's a pretty rich field of great productions and history and legacy coming from the start of that theater company till today. So there are people who buy subscriptions to the Tarragon because it's the Tarragon. So it's like everything else, rep isn't made in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Your reputation is something that is built on and developed and massaged and can be lost instantly, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, that's why it's an art and we're not building cars.
I feel like building cars would be hard too. I mean, I don't want to don't
It's
trust
all
me
machines,
with your car.
man. All machines.
Remember when there was liquid coming out of the car and I was like, Philip, what is this? It's probably just brake fluid. And then I Googled it and it told me I was stupid. And no, I'm not doing that.
It never really kind of crosses my mind. I mean, I don't leave having created a show thinking, oh gosh, that's terrible. I mean, I'll think that about other people's shows, but never mind.
I was about to say, I mean, I know there's shows that anyway, that I wouldn't necessarily want to go back to. Because I'm like, no, that had its time. But in every single instance, like I know we're not, and I'm not going into a process going like, oh, I really hope this is shit. Like I really hope this I really hope this is a bad time and it's received terribly, right? No. But so I don't really think about that either. It's just more along the lines of, well, that's an element of trust as well. And you're right, and time and building that trust for outside of taste or outside of, that subjective thing that art is that you can still be rewarded by the experience and what has been shown, even if you dislike it or even if it's not for you. I think the worst case scenario would be indifference about any of the work that we do, whether it's the folks on this call or the companies that we've been associated with, is that certainly feel have something, feel something. I'd rather you hate it adamantly and I get a letter about it.
Yeah. What amazed me when I was down at Stratford doing a fellow was being stopped on the street by a couple who told me they had seen every single Othello that had ever been produced at Stratford. And we proceeded to then have this really amazing conversation about the work and the art and all of that. And that's where an informed audience that is keen to be at your theater company can be amazing, right? Because they have seen enough work. We don't actually have in terms of I don't know. There wasn't ever a time like this that we had critics or reviewers who followed your work, Mike, or my work, or Luke's your work, and over a span of years, and could then contextualize what you did in a particular play in 2021 against what you said and what you did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That contextualization of the growth of an artist, right? I don't know if that was, maybe that's just a pipe dream, but man, oh man, that's the kind of thing that I think changes the entire conversation, is people who have a knowledgeable input into your work and what you've created.
I'm gonna segue us. We're talking about investment, we're talking about trust, we're talking about audiences. We've now gotten to the stakeholder point of the conversation. Again, so yeah, we had this pre-conversation like a week and a bit ago, and we're talking about these, and then like the words get thrown around, and Philip's always the one to stop and be like, what do we mean when we say this word? So here's another what do we mean when we say this word moment with Philip Bacon, which is, so when we have a podcast, Philip, this will be like a whole segment.
All right.
Stakeholders.
Yeah, that gets thrown around almost as much as iterative, but stakeholders, I turn around and I go, all of a sudden I just stopped and I went, what stakes are they holding? And nobody ever seems to have that conversation. And we just kind of generically nod our head and go, oh yeah, stakeholders. And so ever since that pre-chat, I've been going around trying to figure out, when we say stakeholders, what are the stakes that are not based on money, right? So is it, I mean, the audience, they're buying tickets, the donors are giving money, the foundations are giving money, the banks are giving money, individual donors are giving money, like, so those are all included. So who are the people in a non-financial modality which have a stake in your company. It's been really hard to try to figure out who that would be. So because I think it's a very different conversation if we talk about stakeholders and we mean people in which there's a financial interchange. And if that's all it is, that's great. But let's understand we're talking about money, not some altruistic buy-in. I don't know what you want to do with that, Luke. I'm like,
just to ponder it. I know Mike's I see the wheels turning.
Yeah. There's yeah. So well, see, I'm thinking of like what happens if the work isn't there, or what happens if so it is a little bit altruistic. I'll see that. But I'll raise you like the impact of the work, right? Within even if there's still a financial implication, but let's remove that part of the equation here, because I'm like, say we decided to, what if, you know, money wasn't a barrier and we were able to, you know, have audience, you know, see shows for free or what have you, or sliding scale where we cannot bank on the same sort of sustenance as we would in terms of, say, box office revenue. So then it becomes about the experience. And if we look at like what the past 18 months have shown us, it's like there is something at stake. So when it comes to a larger community, and we'll talk about community, but a larger community sense of like what the impact of theater gives, or what the impact of our work is, or what the impact of a venued institution gives. So when I think of say a non-venued company who is, I don't know, let's take Obsidian, for example. I would want to ensure that a company like Obsidian knows that that Tarragon has their back outside of Tarragon, or that a Cahoots can rely on a Tarragon, and that without Tarragon, there is something that is lost in terms of a resource or a service for an Obsidian or Cahoots. That is a different sort of relationship, and that for me adds an extra layer of responsibility again, or opportunity that is outside of the financial. But I need to percolate it on a little bit more about it. But that's what I can give right now.
well,
Yeah,
I spent a lot of time thinking about it this last week either, and
I knew you would.
getting stuck. I just kept getting stuck. I mean, I'm a big believer in revenue, right? I think revenue is an excellent thing, because it allows you to big up your promises. It allows you to make the investments, right? So I am not saying that theaters shouldn't make money, because how can I say you need to invest in the next generations if you don't have money to invest? Because goodwill and, you know, and thoughts and prayers aren't going to be as helpful as paying an intern a living wage so that they can do the work and start to break down the bourgeoisie socioeconomic impact of theater as basically a rich person's art. So you can't do that without revenue. So I'm not saying that. I just want us to use words that have some sort of real meaning, instead of just this kind of glib, off the cuff, generic, feel good crap.
Well, and I think what we've landed on is that I think people have been using stakeholders incorrectly. Like I don't think you can actually separate the money from that specific word. And I think what Mike's talking about is a direction that companies want to go in, but I think they say stakeholders, but what they actually mean is something else. And it may be a word that is also being misused in a different situation, and we actually need to like do a little switcheroo, because then we come to community, which is a word that also gets thrown around a lot, and it's not something that is just like all encompassing. It has to be specific to that company. Like I really, whenever I'm on a grant panel and people say, well, our community, I'm like, I don't know who your community is. Like, how am I supposed to know that? You need like, it's gotta be identified. It's gotta be specific. And then there's the whole, well, is your audience your community thing? And when I think about Obsidian, how most of our audience was white, but then I wouldn't know if that was necessarily the people that we were trying to support in the community, but that's just also how theater was. We talked about this in our chat beforehand, and I know that some people are still surprised to hear that like most of our Obsidian's audience was and still is primarily white. You know, you'll get like a show like Schoolgirls, where you'll see like for half of the run, it'll be majority Black people in the audience. But if you were to look at the numbers for that show, it'd still be mostly white. But it also then goes back to where is the money, who has the money, and then it gets back to the stakeholders, because the people who hold the stakes, the people that have the money, and we don't need to go, you know, all the way down the capitalism train right now. But it's it does kind of come down to money. Wow, I don't know where I was going with that. That was just leading us off.
Community, I don't know.
Community money. Okay, Community. Not the TV show, which I finally watched at the beginning of the pandemic, because I was like, sure, people have been telling me to watch Community for years and years and years. I finally watched it. I stopped when Donald Glover left. People said it was going to get bad after he left. I didn't know it was going to get that bad. So the Community that we're talking about, Mike, I'm going to throw to you and Tarragon. What, like, who do you see as Tarragon's community going into it, and do you see that changing just by nature of just like by where we are at in time and COVID and coming back to theater?
Yeah, well, we work with a lot of, we serve many communities, right? It's not a homogenous word. It's not, there is no big C. In this regard, we're thinking of our artistic community. We're thinking of an artistic community being the folks that we engage with. We have the specifics of the playwrights that we've supported. There is a community within the home, that within Tarragon, that has been a home for many artists, many playwrights. There's certainly our audience community. There's our regional community, actually where we're located, in this Tarragon village, or like in the GTA. And then there's the facets or the factions within each of those larger spheres. And, you know, for the sake of sounding really boring and going into a marketing exercise, you know, that's actually the work ahead. Is, you know, we're no different, and, you know, the majority of our audience is white, comes from a certain privilege, certain class, and they have, going back to the stakeholders, held Tarragon up to a place where it is right now. And so, you know, when we look, sorry, my stepdaughter singing in the background. When we look at you know, really the question of like, how long is that going to be sustained? Like how, or if we want to again evolve the question of access to theater and who theater is for, then we're going to have to look at our analytics, and we're going to have to look at our marketing, and we're going to when we're talking about opening our doors and opening the tent, then there's some real grassroots work that needs to happen. So what we're talking about right now is this word of like meaningful community partnerships. So it's not just for the sake of, you know, let's build a a partnership. Let's do, that is show specific, but actually creating, allowing Tarragon to be an option for throughout the season, just to visit for somebody who would not necessarily know that Tarragon was for them. And that's really the work ahead. And that's the work that's going to take a while. Like, that's going to take a long time. And Obsidian has done it. BTW is the same thing. Majority of their audience was white. So this is a theater question. This is an art question. This is a culture question. And this is an economics question. And so when I look at it like that, that is how we're navigating. So all that to say is we serve many, many, many communities. And there are those that, again, have decided that, okay, no, Tarragon isn't necessarily my home, and it's my work, and it's our work to change that.
I'm glad that you just kind of summed it up to, there's many communities. Like, there are actually different communities, and I think the less we talk about community as one thing, and the more we realize that there are different communities, the more we can position our companies to serve the different communities in different ways. Like, I think there's also this idea that this one show that we have potentially has to, like, everyone has to like it, but there are, like, you can program. I mean, you can see it in some of the programming that companies are putting out, right? You know what is the show for a certain part of their audience, a certain demographic. You know what this show is supposed to do, that audience is supposed to bring in. But how do we go beyond the programming? How do we go into the training? How do we go into other various outreach to be able to welcome in different communities and to be specific about how we engage with them? So they also feel like there's a relationship there, that you didn't just like cast a wide net and be like, okay, did we catch you in that? No, there's a conversation, there's a relationship that's being built. And I think that speaks to, Martin Morrow just asked in our Q&A, how do you build a BIPOC audience? I think it goes back to what Philip was saying, is that these things take a long time. The same, like, takes a long time to build up all these BIPOC artists, takes a long time to build up the BIPOC audiences as well, because they haven't been seeing their stories on the stage. So they like, if you see like Trey Anthony's shows, like, I remember when I first went to a Trey Anthony show in Toronto, and it was the blackest audience I've ever seen. And people are like yelling at the actors. Like, it just felt like they knew this was their story. They knew how to engage with it. They knew how to like be in the space. They were comfortable. But then some of those people only go to Trey shows because they know that Trey can provide them that experience. So we need to know that these companies can actually provide us that experience that we're looking for. And then, through rep, through trust, through word of mouth, it's going to take some time.
I can also say that in the 20 years or 21 years of Obsidian, I mean, the number of Black artists or Black actors that were available has totally changed over the last 20 years, right? So shows that you could never have thought of doing with professional artists in 2003, 2004, you can easily do today because of that growth in there. So everything fits together. It's not just one part is the magic part. It's all of the parts working together and developing together to all of a sudden, you end up being able to bring and do shows with amazing actors and designers, and it all has to work together. I mean, right now, frankly, I've got a show down. I was talking to Natalie Akers today, a show down at Shaw, and I mean, it breaks my heart because this is a show that should be seen by thousands and thousands of people. It's it is as timely a show as Passover was, and due to circumstances, it's getting the same kind of audience that Passover did, which is ridiculous to me considering what's happened in between these two shows. But so what can you do, right? You've done the work, you've created something that's really vibrant and special and challenging, and something that should be seen all over and make a powerful statement. And yet it doesn't, and it's theater and it'll be gone. you know, at the end of the first week of October, and then we move on to something else. And that's the nature of the business. But you have to keep doing that over and over and over again until you find out what shows resonate with people and builds their faith in your company. I mean, yeah, and you never know. Who knew that Ruined was going to be such a big hit? Who knew that Intimate Apparel was going to be such a big hit? No, we didn't know. But they struck a right chord at the right time, because it's still an art, right? And you can't quantify it. I mean, and that's the mystery, that's the joy, that's the passion, is that it's an art, and it needs artists to lead it.
I think that's a, oh yeah, Mike, do you want to jump in?
Nope. That's
You
great.
sure?
Yeah, well, you know, I will, because now I'm speaking.
Yeah, we got there.
Just like, no, there is no equation beyond, well, there isn't a tried and tested equation that yields the, okay, this is gonna be the result. But like Philip's mentioning it already, there's something to say about time, place, and space in which a piece happens. And you know, time obviously being like date, but place, geography is a huge thing. You know, what is happening around that piece. But it really does center around the art. Is we're in this business of art making and again telling stories and championing stories. So that's still the foundation of everything, in spite of that non-existent equation.
Wonderful. I'm glad you chimed in, Mike. And I am going to toss us into the final 20 minutes of Q&A, because we've got a couple questions coming up in the chat. I will also just say that Trouble in Mind is a great production, and if you get a chance to go down to Shaw and see it before it closes, definitely do. Mike, I don't know if you were able to head down to Shaw when you were in
When
town.
does it close, Philip?
October 9.
Oh, it's just such short runs. Okay, yeah, October 9th.
It's been running since like August 20th, Doc.
I'm in Montreal, though. I'm in Montreal.
Come down. I'll get you a ticket, man. I'll squeeze you.
Yeah,
in.
I think at the very least we
Thank you,
could get
Fred.
you the ticket.
Thank you, Fred.
I wouldn't mind seeing it again, but I also have a cast on my foot, but that's another story. Okay, we've got some questions in here. There was, Martin's asked about any chance of a Trouble in Mind transfer to Toronto.
Yo, Doug, Martin, I do not run a theater company anymore. Stop it. You know better.
There was also a question somebody removed from the Q&A that was about stakeholder. Oh no, I see it. I want to actually start with that one because I do think it's an interesting plot. So somebody, Anne, put in the Q&A that she believes that a stakeholder is a person with an interest in or concern about something, and that is the theater audience. Now, I think the theater audience, yes, because I think they're paying money and thus the show is going to impact them. But if I do disagree with if I just have a concern about something or an interest in something, I don't necessarily know if I would consider myself a stakeholder. Any thoughts on that from you two?
I have a huge interest in Taiwanese bug-bitten oolong teas, but I would not presume to be a stakeholder in the manufacture of same. But I buy it, so that tells me something.
I knew you were going to have a very specific interest to bring up, which is the reason I wanted to get to that question.
It's
Mike?
Great tea. I got it. Well, it's another whole conversation.
I want to be a stakeholder in that. No, but I will never. I'm gonna get a tattoo of stakeholder now. No, yeah, absolutely, yeah, sure, yes, but to what extent? I mean, it's an investment. The key word here is an investment, and unfortunately, not. In this regard, it comes back to, the economics question. But again, the stakeholder is you investing. So you seeing a show does not necessarily make us want the theater to be dependent on us if something goes awry. It's that kind of thing. The audience is not implicated in that same regard. If an artist or an AD or an MD, whatever, does a crappy show or anything like that. But I hear your point. I think, but it's to a degree. Yeah.
I think that down at Shaw, they have the Shaw Guild, which is the people who are docents and ushers and they do all of this huge volunteer work around the company to because it's their passion, and as such, the president of the guild is a member of the Shaw board and has, and I think that that's the only group that I can kind of come up with that is a stakeholder in a non-monetary sense, and it's a huge group of volunteers volunteering their time and energy, but I don't think most theater companies have that yet.
Dun-dun-dun.
I'll be there, and I'll be an usher at your show, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
I'll be like,
Oh my
yo,
gosh.
shut up and sit down and shut up. Put your phone away. What's the matter with you?
And there's the letter. There's the letter.
Moving on to the next question, just also to say that you can like the questions for the folks who are watching. If you click the Q&A, you can see the questions, and it moves them to the top of the list here. So I'm going to prioritize the ones with the most likes, because that's this world we live in now, folks. Okay, so Paul Smith, looks like there's 3 questions, and I have not pre-read these because I've been listening in the conversation here. So let's just go with the first one. So on the advancement of POC work within the industry and the world as a whole, I'm curious about the concept of leaving a predominantly white institution versus being the vaccine to create cells of color. Nice choice of words. In your opinion, is it better to create systems that benefit us, or is there value in being the catalyst in a broken system? Good question.
Wow. Well, I know what Mike has to say. I mean, it's a complicated question, and I think there are people who righteously have their own beliefs or whatever. My own personal belief is that if you want to advance Black artists in this culture, you need to support Black institutions. There need to be more Black institutions. Your money has to go towards them. Your energy, your time, the passion of your life has got to go towards them. I think that's the best way to advance it, because it gives Black artists an opportunity to exist in a place and in a culture that they virtually will not get anywhere else. I was talking to one of my actors, an American actor who is doing Trouble in Mind with me, and he said, yeah, he's done a lot of work with Penumbra, and Penumbra is like one of the leading Black theater companies in the States, right? I don't even know how many shows that they have developed and premiered and taken to New York. Innumerable shows. It's a 200-seat theater, right? And they did that because of the dedication of the Black artists and Black community and funders, everybody working to make this company under great leadership, to make this company the standout, one of the standout companies in North America. And I think that would be where I would say, if you all want to make a change, go there. I know there's lots of people who disagree with that, and that's cool, because we all got our own lives to lead.
Yeah. Support Black companies, support Black leaders. I don't I don't think one actually, for myself, one does not equate the other. This is the job that I have right now within this institution, but in terms of my personal work and my personal mission, it doesn't change. That being said, I'm working in a different environment, and I think there is something. This is why I say support Black leadership, because even if it's not in your face, there's a lot of internal work that is happening to, whether or not you describe it as fix a broken system. I challenge you to think about steering the rudder in another direction, or steering the ship in a direction that that also befits that Black leadership. So I think there's impact in both, but when it comes to this particular question to myself, they're not separated. Support Black leadership, support Black art. Yeah.
I'm going to segue this into Dina's question. She also put the question in earlier. Also, hey, Dina, what's up? What distinguishes, okay, there's a prelude to this, but I'm just gonna get down to it. What distinguishes Black leadership from non-Black leadership? And then there's a part two, which is what can institutions that have not enjoyed Black participation in leadership positions learn from those styles and maybe ways of working? I paraphrase that last one a little bit. I hope that's okay, Dina.
So many glib answers to that.
Yeah. And Dina did say it's likely an impossible question and beyond the obvious values of, but like I've never asked myself that question before. That's why I kind of was like, oh, I've never thought about that.
All right. You know what? For me, what it is if you're in a room with all Black people doing a play, everybody's shoulders are down. Everybody has a commonality. Everybody can laugh at a bad Jamaican accent. Everybody can get up, well, not me, but a lot of people can get up and all of a sudden bust into a rap and understand what the hell they're doing. It's about being in a place where, frankly, white actors are in most of their career, where there's a place of comfort, of care, where they just have to walk in there and be the best artists they can be. And that's what being in an all Black room is like for the Black actors. I do worry you can't change some of that stuff, yo. Like, I think people keep thinking there's like one universal answer to things, and I don't think there is, right? The way that people can exist when you're with your crew, when you're with your folks, when everybody knows that joke and it's great, and you know that anybody else outside hears it, they go, what, you can't say that? But it's that kind of a place where there's a commonality and a place where you don't have to be the one to explain. The burden of the entire white race or Black race is not on you. You just get to be who you are as a human being and as an artist. And you can't explain it, and it's not transferable. All the times that I was an actor in white rehearsal halls, you're living up to their expectation. You're not being who you are. You've code switched to hell so you can get by. So nobody paying you to be, the magical Negro. And that's an unfair burden. What a joy it is to be in a room where you don't have to be that. Where you get to be your authentic self in all its glory and do the work of being an artist. I don't even know how you replicate that. Just like I can't paint a Rodin or paint sculpt a Rodin or do a Degas. I can't do that. But I can create a Black room where people get to be at ease, and then they can do the hard work of being brilliant artists.
Sabtina. Space and environment, I will absolutely underline that. I just want to look at the word leadership in this regard without, let's not absolve ourselves that there are leaders of every, this is about like what is strong leadership, what is not strong leadership by virtue of culture. I just want to make sure that that's super, super clear, that just because you're a Black leader means that you're brilliant, because people are people, right? Let's be real. But to Philip's point, I would say that the biggest shift that I've noticed as a performer or even as a director is the space. Are the shoulders going down? Is the ability to do my job without being my color or being my race, to actually focus on what is it that I'm offering into this work like anybody else, because nobody else has been asked that question in the room. My white colleagues have not been asked that question of like, how does it feel to be white in this room, in an all white space, right? It really, really does shift when you change the environment or you change the leader of that process, regardless of their ability or their capability. There is something that shifts, and it's not just within Black leadership, and it's not unique. I don't think it's unique within Black leadership. It's about the cognizance of the space, the kind of space that you want to encourage all your artists to be your best self. My in is through my lens, and that's what that means to me. My definition of the space stems from the notion of the village, or stems from the notion of the village circle, and that's what the kind of environment that I want to create. But it's not, that's my definition of it. It doesn't belong solely to me.
There's so many good questions here. We've got 5 minutes left. I'm gonna try to get to 2 of them. This is what I get for talking too much about community and Donald Glover. I accept that. Okay, so this one we're gonna do Neo's first, and then Cameron, we'll get to yours because I think that'll be just a quicker one. So Neo's question is, how do we encourage Black leadership to not replicate the same oppressive systems that predominantly white leadership has fostered? In what ways would you encourage prospective leaders to change existing systems or to create new systems?
Can I just, the idea of it changing systems or creating new systems is something that I've been thinking about a lot. I don't think we can change the system. The system is what it is. Or there's like a different, that sounded very glib, sounded very, very dark. I want to shift that language to working. The only way this is burning down the system, is actually completely absolving it, and then we're talking about like it's the system is systemic. So this is capitalism, this is like colonialism, this is all of the isms is in the notion of the system. So unless you're completely destroying it and working in a way or operating in a way that is counter to all of the fundamental things that allow us to operate in this particular world, you're working in the system. So that consciousness of working in that is, how are you navigating it? What is it that you are either questioning? What is it that you can work within it so that you can steer? But you can't, or I can't think that just by steering means that the system is not there. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent, because once again, Philip makes a definition. What is the system?
I was going to say, here's another one.
Right, right. And that's everything from the Charities Directorate, the CRA, all the funding, all of the governance issues, the boards, everything. So it's not just one little. When you talk about blowing up, it's nuking it, right? It's huge, and that goes to government in all its levels. That's a big old thing. Enjoy doing that.
Cameron Grant, how's it going, Cam? Hope you're doing well. Miss you, buddy. Question, how do we get young Black people interested in being on boards of theater companies? I'll start just because I've been on a few, well, I've been on the boards of associations, and honestly, there's an expectation of giving money. That's a part of being on the board. So you need to have an understanding of what those responsibilities are, what the expectation is from the company. Can a company just have somebody on their board who's not giving the, required in the bylaws $500 a year or whatever it is? There's logistical things in that, but there's also, nobody wants to be that Black guy on the board. And to be in a space where you actually have no voice and no power. So can you guarantee power and say and voice in those conversations? Are they the only one? Are there more people? Philip's on a board where, he's at risk. If he leaves that board, all of a sudden the other Black person is the only Black person on the board. So then we're also in these situations of, I think it's in the system. It's like the system is not set up for young Black people to be on boards of directors.
But I would also argue as well, though, Luke, there's a couple things. Most boards now are on a give whatever you can, right? So it's not, there are some of the boards of major big regional theaters, this isn't like the States where, people on boards at theater companies, have to give $25,000, $50,000 a year each. It's not that. People understand that people are coming at this for different means. I think you have to have an invested interest in the company. And I would say, Cameron, just go and if you want to be on a board, y'all should just call up the board chair and say, I would like to be on the board. And that usually is a big deal. Look, I'm on the Shaw board. Everybody on that board can buy and sell me and my entire life in a heartbeat. But I'm not there for the money. They're not looking at me to give thousands and thousands of dollars. They're saying, what can you value add to this board that hasn't been there before? And by the way, I don't do EDI work, so that's not why I'm on the board.
Check out succession and mentorship as well. If you have the so where I'm looking into actually creating a young leaders unit. So within, not related to art, but actually the buy-in within art, so that the representation that we have on our Tarragon board, that it doesn't stop there, but this is where mentoring and succession can really, really be a helpful thing, and look towards that future. There's no reason why there can't be headhunting, right? And those conversations with those young Black folk to be like, look, I know the board, like there's nothing really that attractive about a board necessarily. Unless you're into that sort of thing. So you're gonna have to do some talking and some convincing to make it worth their time and their value. But start now, because it's not about like the tomorrow. It's really about a couple of years to come, or many years to come.
Yeah, they have to absolutely care about the company. I joined the PACT board because I cared about PACT and I cared about the industry, and I thought I could make a difference doing that. I showed up to Obsidian board meetings. I showed up to the AGMs before I was an artist working with them, and got asked if I want to be on that board in that moment because they knew that I was invested in the company. So you got to make it worth their while. You gotta get them to care, which is a weird note to end on, but it is 8:02. I was copying and pasting a bunch of the questions that were remaining into a Word doc so that when Mike, Philip, and I have our podcast, we can, address some of these. There's some really good questions. Here we were in the pre-meeting being like, oh, are people going to ask questions? Like, well, we just have to keep talking. And I'm like, it's okay, I'll just talk about the TV shows that I watch. It'll be fine. But here we are. So maybe Brock will have us back again in the future. Maybe we'll do this in 10 years and it'll be like the conversation 10 years later, what's changed? But wow. For now, we are done.
I can't even imagine that.
Just white
I
hair.
think it would be funny. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Mike. Thanks to everybody for asking questions, for joining us. The YouTube link has been posted below so that you know where you can go and watch us later and send it all your friends. So it's on the YouTube channel for the Marilyn Walker School of Fine and Performing Arts at Brock University. And this series, again, is the Transformation and Adaptation in Theatre Pedagogy and Training. And it continues November 15th with leading BIPOC production and design artists from Vancouver, Toronto, and Niagara communities. More information and sign up will be coming soon. And that's it. I'm gonna go not watch Dancing with the Stars, but probably watch the election results. Mike and Philip, what are you two doing for the rest of the night? This is our final question.
I'm going to say, Mike, great to see you. Next time you're in town, give a shout, man. We'll hook up.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm
Cool.
going to say that as well, man. It's really, really, really good to see you. And Luke, it's good to see you too. I'm going to put my stepdaughter to bed. That's what I'm going to do right now.
Rock on. Good night.
Good night,
Good night,
folks.
everybody.